It is a tale of corruption, fraud, government capture, and so much more. News stories being released which may have misled the public as to how power is really generated at Walt Disney World Resort. An independent audit has come out over the last 48 hours, and it has been a reckoning for everybody involved with Disney. The truth has now seen the light of day. And the light of day, we find out, is probably not powering very much of anything at Walt Disney World Resort relative to what quote-unquote dirty energy is providing. It's just the beginning, folks, as we dive into a massive potential scandal involving solar panels, fake power plants, municipal bonds, and much, much more. Dang it, Bob, it's about to get very hot. Hello, folks, and welcome back to another glorious, sunshiny day out there. And the Walt Disney Company needs it to be sunshiny each and every day down there in the Sunshine State because of all the stuff going on with their solar farms, which, folks, we're here to tell you is one giant virtue signal. That's what we believe now after that audit that came out yesterday. The audit is massive. And as we have suggested in the past, and as we said yesterday, there are many, many pages. On each one of those pages is information that would normally sink a normal company. But the Walt Disney Company is no normal company, but it is something tremendous to read through the full scale of the alleged corruption that exists with just the Walt Disney World Resort and what has been going on down there. Someone who is not corrupt in the least is Culture Casino. Sir, welcome back to the channel.
Well, thanks for having me again, Pro, and this should be fun. I feel the power coursing through me right now.
This is, I have to say, Culture, that I never anticipated when we started this channel that we would be talking about utilities and power plants, but this has to be talked about, and this is just step one in now going into high specificity as to what Disney has been up to. Folks, this is going to be an amazing conversation. You do not want to go anywhere. If you have ever thought that corporations around the world were issuing massive virtue signals, get ready. We're going to expose this fully. Before we do, though, Culture, I have not yet had you on the channel to give your thoughts on everything that was exposed over the last 48 hours in terms of the Walt Disney Company. So would you like to give your opinion, please, about just what we've learned?
Well, I'm unsurprised, to be fair, but I think we would take about 4 or so hours to get through everything that I think about this, and I don't think we have that kind of time. But it doesn't surprise me just how corrupt Disney is and has been for quite some time. We've known for a while that RCID was not being operated as intended.
Reedy Creek Improvement District, for those of you just discovering the channel, that was the special local government that was set up to control the Walt Disney World Resort and provide all the services. And Disney is alleged in this audit to have completely captured that local government through fraud, bribery, all kinds of different methods, control of residents, etc.
Yeah, and in control of what they controlled. I mean, obviously their leases and everything else that they got so they could maintain residents there.
Yes,
first
including Culture, running 2 cities that were supposed to be the foundation of this special district, and those 2 cities, of course, were populated by only a handful of Disney employees each. The cities consisted essentially, in terms of residents, of a cul-de-sac with mobile homes surrounding the cul-de-sac, hidden away behind a metal gate at Walt Disney World so that the public never knew what was going on. Speaking of not knowing what was going on, though, let's get into the utility side of this, folks. There's going to be so many videos coming out. I mean, there will be years, not just on this channel, but so far beyond. And so get ready, because this is, if you want to know how big this will probably alter the landscape of U.S. laws going forward, because this can't happen again. So let's get into exactly what happened. We're now going in to give people an idea of just how deep this goes with this class we're going to teach today. No tuition, of course, folks. You're all on scholarship just for the fact that you are indeed true scholars. We're going to page 47. So open your text, ladies and gentlemen, to page 47, and let's get into this. All right, historically, the electric, natural gas, water, chilled water, and hot water utility systems in Reedy Creek Improvement District were owned by Disney. In 2003, Reedy Creek Improvement District purchased these assets in a bond financed transaction. In other words, government entanglement at a cost of nearly $70 million. There is no record of the Reedy Creek Improvement District performing any due diligence in relation to this transaction. $70 million purchase, folks. No background, nothing. It was just boom, boom. Here's the deal. Here's what we're going to do. And for those of you out there who know how government works, that's not how government works, which is highly irregular for an expense of this kind and which deprived district taxpayers of transparency and accountability for the utility purchase. So now, Reedy Creek Improvement District was in control of the utilities, supposedly. Reedy Creek Improvement District owns a variety of utilities that serve the district, and it contracts with RCES. Culture, what does that stand for?
Reedy Creek Energy Systems.
To maintain and operate those utilities pursuant to the labor services agreements. Some Reedy Creek Improvement District employees, including at least one who worked closely with RCES, did not understand that RCES was a Disney-owned company. Employees thought that RCID, RCES, Disney relationship is a little complicated. It goes into the exhibit. And yes, folks, these are prima facie claims. In other words, they have the receipts. They have the full-on evidence of these things. On other occasions, RCID employees struggled to gain the access they needed to RCID-owned equipment on Disney property. For example, needing to photograph RCID equipment located on Disney's backlot where photography is not allowed. Some aspects of the RCID RCES relationship were impossible to untangle after the fact. For example, determining which entity had provided fuel for certain vehicles. During the transition from RCID to cftod, that's the new Central Florida Tourism Oversight District, employees discussed the need to get more separation between RCID and Disney, including in relation to RCES. So, all of this culture is the enjoining of a private corporation of the Walt Disney Company, right? It's owned publicly, traded publicly, but it's not government. And so that company then entangled completely in ways that you couldn't even figure out where it began or ended with a government and with the provision of utilities in which Disney is not the sole constituent. And so this affected more than just Disney, of course. But again, it is the full-on capture, allegedly in this audit, the full-on capture of a company in regards to utility provisions. And not only that, but apparently the issuance of funds, large funds, $70 million alone in just this one critique, all connected with bonds. Your thoughts, Culture, before we go to the video?
Well, it's ridiculous. Looking further into Reedy Creek Energy Services, I was rather surprised that essentially the equipment was owned by Disney, but operated by this entity that really was just still Disney. It's crazy.
Right, folks. If you want to know a comparison, imagine. Let's put this theoretical land in Oklahoma, because we need to bring this down into the practical. Okay, so let's localize it. Let's imagine there's a town in Oklahoma where Walmart owns all the electrical lines. They own all of the water lines. But then there's a government, a utility company that's owned by the government that's operating supposedly just the power that runs through the lines. Or, it's so bizarre, right? It's such a strange situation. And again, it's the mixing of government and company. And that was never supposed to be the way it played out. We're now going to watch a video. This comes from Legal Mindset's live stream that they did. We've got about 2 minutes to watch of this, where this gets really, really fascinating, exactly the level of corruption that's involved. Folks, I would recommend that you go watch, and it's 4 hours long, but it's amazing to watch Andrew dissect what's being said in that audit meeting, that conference that was held on Wednesday. So let's get into it, and then we'll give our thoughts on this. Here we go.
I created quite the firestorm when I asked the human resources manager to set up an interview with the first utility employee. As it turns out, the utility employees are all employees of Disney. They are not district employees. And I discovered that actually there's not an easy way for Mr. Gilzine or other employees of the district to interact with the employees of the utilities. And we, in fact, were not permitted to speak to any of them, nor were we permitted to enter any of the physical manifestations of the utilities. One of the things...
Culture, real quick, for folks out there who are thinking, oh, come on, this is just, what sense does this make? I would suggest that if the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District, which owns the management of the utilities, if they can't go into the facilities that they're supposed to run, then something is probably up. Is that fair, you think?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there should be zero reason to keep out the people that are supposed to be controlling all of these things from the things they're supposed to be controlling. I mean, that's more than a little odd. You want to inspect your holdings regularly to make sure they are in good condition. So this is strange. I'm
thinking culture. And by the way, we think we know why they were kept out. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But I'm thinking of some times in the past when there were countries that were supposed to have inspections to make sure that they were not doing bad things, and they didn't want to be inspected. And just suggesting that although not at the same scale, Disney doesn't want to be inspected, even when it's the government that controls the things that should be inspected. So don't know how Disney barred the doors, but apparently they did.
I wanted to look at
that's
was
crazy, and
the
that's
electric generation plan.
a violation of
the
law
thing that
as
I
well,
did
because they're
discover
prohibiting them
indirectly
from
was that
accessing
actually
their
the
own
district
assets.
generates no electricity from that
Wait,
plant.
what?
It's a
Now, this is important, culture, because there are two power plants on Disney property, not including the solar array.
Mm-hmm.
What he is suggesting is that at least one, and we believe now two, but at least one, the one that they tried to inspect and were not allowed to, doesn't generate any electricity at all, despite the fact that $70 million was paid with the government funds to acquire said power plant. This is where we get into all kinds of things are not right here. So let me tell you what, we've talked to some people, culture, and let's enter into rumor and speculation territory, because guess what, folks? We are not behind the scenes with a camera taking photos, and we are not in possession of any kind of official documents, nor do we want to be in possession of said documents, and we have not seen said documents. So we're completely third party to all of this. So officially speculation territory. Culture, it's our belief now that the two power plants, one is offline, period, and it would be rather difficult to bring it back online, and the other has actually, although the facade and everything remains such that it looks like a power plant, it has actually been transformed so that it is just a air conditioning unit. So it just provides chilling air chilled air for a theme park. And that these power plants that one might think that's what the taxes are going to through Reedy Creek Improvement District, through the taxes that are supposed to pay for utilities, that there's actually no power plant for those funds to go to that's producing power.
Wow.
Let's keep playing.
cogeneration plant. The district generates no electricity from it. All the electricity in the district is purchased from third parties and delivered through the grid.
Now, culture, this is what got our attention so tremendously, is when he said this. He is claiming that all, and we can play it again if we need to, but he just said that all power at Walt Disney World is purchased from a third party through the grid. Now, that is immensely interesting because of this government purchase of utilities, and then two, because Disney has been touting to a large degree their use of solar power and how it's going to transform Walt Disney World. In fact, culture, let's take a look at that now. If we go to the press release from Disney Parks blog, Monday, April 4th, 2022, by Dr. Mark Penning, Vice President, Animal Science and Environment at Disney Parks, Disney doubles ways to power the magic with 2 new solar arrays. And pay attention to the wording in this, because this is going to matter. Picture what's possible when 40% of the energy supplied to the most magical place on Earth is generated by the sun. Notice that while it's strongly suggested that 40% of the energy supplied will come from the sun, it's not stated. It's just said, picture what's possible. Building on today's exciting launch of Disney Planet Possible, and just in time to celebrate Earth Month, Walt Disney World Resort's available solar energy resources will more than double with 2 new solar arrays constructed by 2 prominent solar development companies. Folks, we haven't had a chance to look into these solar development companies, but yes, we will be looking into it. And yes, we are going to be looking to see, are there ties to other countries? As the most recent examples of Disney's commitment to taking action to change our planet's story, these new arrays will reduce our carbon footprint and help power even more magic in our theme parks, resorts, and beyond. Culture, I find it unpleasant that they are chopping down vast, and we're talking about thousands of acres of forests in order to put these plastic solar arrays down. And if we know anything about climate change, we know that the best way to capture carbon that we have right now is trees. So we're not gaining by chopping down huge forests. The two new 75 megawatt arrays will be located in Gilchrist County and Polk County on over 1,000 total acres. So that's 1,000 total acres that are no longer wildlife inhabited, and all kinds of plants capturing all the pollutants in the air. Of course, that brings us to 150 megawatts total out of those, right? And so we'll talk about that in a moment. So that was what Disney was saying, but this also gets into Good Morning America, right? Good Morning America covers this. Here's what Good Morning America had to say on April 4th, 2022. Remember that Good Morning America, part of ABC News owned by Disney. Walt Disney World Resort to be powered up to 40% by the sun by Tracy J. Wolf. So this goes out into the news and people believe it and they buy it up. The Walt Disney World Resort is adding two 75 megawatt solar arrays to its renewable energy portfolio that, combined with existing infrastructure, will provide. Now, this is amazing to me. So GMA, a news outlet owned by Disney, flat out says, will provide 40% of the park's electricity. But here's where we want to get to. Let's read what Jeff Vail, president of the Walt Disney World Resort, said at the time. This latest step will help us further accomplish our goal of net zero emissions by 2030. Our commitment to the environment goes beyond imagining a brighter, more sustainable future by putting possibility into practice to ensure a happier, healthier planet for all. Culture, the only problem is all of this seems to be fake. Now, we'll get into the solar farms in just a moment. We're going to explain all that. But the fact that Disney is purchasing, according to the audit, apparently Reedy Creek Improvement District, which had controlled Disney, was purchasing all of their electricity off site, third parties. That means that all of this is a bunch of nonsense. And it may have been used, we don't know this yet, but it may have been used to make their ESG scores look really good, to ingratiate themselves, to gain all kinds of federal tax credits and such. We don't know that. We're looking into this, but where there's, when you have this kind of, I think it's okay to say at this point, deception, and we'll get into it in just a moment. What do you make of all of this, Culture? I mean, is this the greatest virtue signal in the history of corporations?
I think it might actually be, and it's funny because there's a lot of self-serving and backroom deals that are being done all the time at various levels of business, and Disney seems to have cornered the market on keeping it all inside their own walls, which is insane. The overreach to take apart wetlands for these purposes is ridiculous. Wetlands that are supposed to be protected. Part of the charter, or the agreement going in, was that Disney would set aside so much of the property that they acquired and have it remain wetlands and have it remain available to the animals. And the fact that they had been getting around that for years by purchasing property that wasn't necessarily, directly adjacent to the stuff that they already owned, and then calling that, part of their wetlands and setting that aside instead. This is, as you say, the greatest virtue signal in the history of corporate America, anyway.
Let's show how bad this gets. Folks, you're looking now at Google Earth. You can see the Magic Kingdom right here. This is their main theme park. This is the flagship theme park, Magic Kingdom.
We need the share.
Oh, sorry about that. Let's go back to it.
There we go.
And here we go. Thank you, Culture.
Yeah.
Up here is Magic Kingdom. You can see the theme park up there, Seven Seas Lagoon below it, parking lot. Now look at the size of the parking lot, folks, and remember that this was already knocked out of the way in terms of carbon capture. You can't have trees at any great percentage in the parking lot. So Disney could have done what has been done in the past at other places, and they could have put solar panels over the parking lot, and we would have no problem with that. We would applaud them for it, but that was expensive. What they did instead is, folks, if you look over here to the left, okay, over the 429, over the toll road, what's happening here is that this area that is west of Shades of Green, which, by the way, we'll be talking about Shades of Green real soon too.
Ooh, okay.
This is the Reedy Creek area, okay, and that's supposed to be preserved land, like you were talking about, Culture, preserved wetlands. And on the west side of Reedy Creek, there was a connection up until very recently in which wildlife had a corridor to pass over and get into the Lake Louisa State Park, also into the Hilochi Wildlife Management Area, and many other places. And in fact, if we scroll out, you can see the vast land that is set aside for wildlife, for nature, all of that, right? It's far larger than even Orlando, and it runs a great distance north and south in Florida. What has blocked off the wildlife, though, culture, from being able to get across the road and get over there are these stupid solar farms where they chop down massive amounts of forest and put in these, and you can't even see them all right now because the videos or the photos from when it was under construction, but massive solar arrays that now are fenced off, right? And essentially cordon the animals into the area of Disney World, not to mention chopping down the forests. So then the question becomes, well, if they are not, if they're not getting any power from inside the district, what's going on with the solar farms? So we think we have an answer here, culture, but again, we've got to enter into speculation territory. So humor me with that for a moment. We do believe that the solar farms are connected to Disney World and are generating electricity. That's our belief. We don't know that for certain, but that's our belief based on what we've seen and people we've talked to. However, the claim, and remember what the claim was 40%, right? And the claim was that Disney World, through this movement of solar farms, they were going to get to a point where they were absolutely net zero emissions for the entire resort by 2030. Basically 6 years from now, because we're about to cross into 2024. Here's what's actually going on. These solar farms, they have a max production combined of about 200 plus megawatts. Now, that doesn't mean, however, that that's how many megawatts they're producing. So that 40% goes out the window when you actually start diving down into availability, electric availability. Now, we've talked to an electrical utilities expert about this. In reality, when you factor in the night and day cycle and when you factor in bad weather and all of that, these solar farms are probably generating about 25% of their total capacity in the actual availability over an entire year. So we go from 40% of Disney World is being powered by solar, and we go from, we're almost there. We're almost at halfway, and in 6 years we'll have net zero. The reality, culture, is that these solar farms are generating probably about 10% of the total electrical need of the Walt Disney World Resort. And based on what the audit is saying, with the purchase of power off-site from third parties, and given what we know about how power is generated in Florida, our utilities electrical expert says that almost certainly Disney is actually powered. 90% of Walt Disney World is probably powered by combined cycle natural gas turbines, which have far greater capacity and which take up far less land, but you would have never known it without this audit. Culture, your thoughts before we watch the rest of the video and dive even more into it. Does that surprise you that this whole solar thing was a bunch of nonsense from Disney? No,
it doesn't. Once again, I'm finding myself less and less surprised by the things that Disney has done and gotten away with, and has been a party to. I'm sure as we investigate more, we'll find even more things that are more than a little suspect. So,
we're just getting started. Yeah. I mean, we are just getting started at what. But here's what's amazing, culture. So they put out these press releases. They own their own news organization. So the news organization carries the water for them and declares, we're at 40%. We're on track for that 100%. And then you actually look at it and you find out, and we would have never known this without the audit. We'd have never known that the reality is that they're actually just buying power off-site that's generated through what they would probably have termed dirty electrical generation, right? This is a dirty way of making power, natural gas. They don't like it, right? But that's what's happening here. But it was all wrapped up in a virtue signal, and it amazes me that I think, culture, this is what the entire American corporate pushes for. They want to put out this belief in the public that we're able to power all of this through solar and all these other ways, but behind the scenes they can't believe that's true because their actions don't suggest it's true. And I do want to take just a moment and say, I'm not an enemy of solar power. Solar in the deserts is wonderful. solar over the top of urban sprawl and on skyscrapers and over parking lots, wonderful. Do it, please. I am 100% in favor of that. But chopping down vast forests for solar arrays that produce at this level of inefficiency, that's nonsense. And that is damaging the planet tremendously.
Well, and then there's a conversation to be had about the delivering electricity to the theme parks, but to even a household. You lose a ton of power just in the conveyance of power to a location. A lot of people don't realize the reason those high tension wires exist is because despite their inefficiencies, they're probably the only way to get power vast distances. And then when you get, things closer and closer in, you're scaling that inefficiency at every connection point. So there's a lot to delivering energy to even your house, but delivering it to a theme park, especially one that again has so much wildlife area and only certain paths that the utility corridors can take, that's ridiculous. So of course the gained efficiency of putting those solar powers over something like a parking lot, like you pointed out, the massive parking lot there at Magic Kingdom and all of the theme parks, you certainly could have knocked out a substantial and very healthy amount of the inefficiency there. You would have provided shade for your guests, for your cars,
but culture that may have been just slightly more expensive. And so what they did instead was they chopped down thousands and thousands of acres of trees. And that's why listen, if you want to put solar panels on your house, I think that's a great idea if you can afford it. I'm not endorsing it because I don't endorse any kind of financial decision that you might out there make, but I see nothing wrong with it.
Well, you eliminate
this idea that you would chop down thousands of acres of forest. That's idiocy.
Yeah, and again, I mean, you reduce the amount of inefficiency if you're producing it locally. I guess that's the entire statement there.
Here's the comparison, culture.
Mm-hmm.
If my neighbor puts solar panels on their roof and covers their roof in solar panels, I'm going to come by and I'm going to say, "Oh, cool. Let me take a look at that." Do you suggest it? What was the cost? I might want to do that. If I walk by my neighbor, however, and they have chopped down all of the trees in their yard or their lawn, and they have ripped all the sod out, and now every square inch of their lot, just on the ground, is covered in solar panels so that their children can't play and the dog can't go out, but it's all solar panels, and there's nothing on the roof, then I'm going to say that person is an absolute idiot. And the only way this works for Disney and for other corporations is that they're able to virtue signal, they're able to get the positive headlines, and I believe that they're probably getting something far greater in return for doing this, even despite the fact that it is damaging the earth.
I'm beside myself, bro. I really
Culture,
am.
I think we have won the day. We have finally reached the point where me and you just have to shake our heads in shame at what this company's been up to.
Yeah.
That said, let's finish our video. We're back on the file there. That's not where we want to be. We want to be here instead. Let's finish it out.
So they're
And I was asking,
their
why
bonds
are
are
they
paying for
maintaining
electric
this
grids
plant?
without.
I was told
and
by
they're
one of the district
maintaining a grid
employees
they're
that the
not making
reason
money
for the
from.
plant
Wow.
was that it would be there in case of emergency. Well, again, I didn't get to speak to anybody.
It's Disney's backup
I
generator.
certainly was not allowed to enter the plant.
What?
One thing I can tell you is unless it's generating electricity using gas turbines, the time to bring online any steam generated electric plant is significant. And so the
They're doing a
extent to which it
steam
would be
pump?
available in an emergency, in my opinion,
They have a
highly
fake
questionable.
steampunk plant.
the one thing I will say though,
So it's a
is that all
taxpayer-funded
of the
power
district
plant that they
employees
don't
were,
have access to, that is
highly
not generating
cooperative with us.
electricity.
and took great
This
pains
is
to get us the
massive
information
fraud
that we were
regarding the bonds that were used to pay for
requesting.
that.
as
Someone needs to get
massive.
access to that immediately.
And I found it to be an entirely
It's their plants.
cooperative,
They need a court order to go in there
and,
and get that ASAP.
effective.
The bond
effective
holders
environment
should
to
be
work
going nuts right
Thank
now.
you very much, Mr. Chair.
Culture, final thoughts on what we've just witnessed, what we've watched, what we've read. And by the way, folks, let me remind you again that we've been in the weeds a bit today. We had to be, and we're going to be again, because this audit is dozens and dozens and dozens of pages, and every page has something like this,
Well,
this is what Disney's been up to.
But that's where you find snakes in the weeds.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and I, the watching Andrew react to that, and of course, watching Andrew yesterday when he was doing that was amazing to me. But he's right. The amount of fraud that was perpetrated against, well, specifically in this case, the bondholders is staggering. I mean, if you are a person who invests in any kind of municipal bond, you count on those being rock solid, and they usually are. In this case, if you bought air or if you bought something that's non-functional, if you bought into that,
right, non-functioning steam,
you should be incensed. You should be knocking at the Attorney General's door. That's what you should be doing.
And in this case, culture, normally you would be mad at the government because the government would be the one issuing municipal bonds. So you'd be mad at a government for misuse. In this case, though, the allegation is that the Walt Disney Company controlled this government completely. And so that's the beginning point of where things have gone wrong. I think the next point is going to be, of course, we're going to have to find out exactly how those solar farms were paid for. Were those paid for through Disney, or were they paid for through similar means? And I guess that's where the investigation goes next, although I suspect there'll be court orders to let the special district get into their own utility buildings and find out what's going on inside the Walt Disney World Resort. Folks, I'm here to tell you, I'm not an enemy of the Walt Disney World Resort. I'm not against the Walt Disney World Resort. It holds many of my favorite childhood memories. I love the place. It's a shame, though, to see that somebody has been allegedly misusing the vast location and doing things that should not be done. And just now it's coming to light. I also want to give a shout out before we wrap up this video. I want to give a shout out to two channels out there who have been doing just fantastic work. Like I said, Legal Mindset, I would highly recommend folks you click on the link down below, and just if you can watch it in chunks, let's say, in segments, go for that. I think you have to go watch to see just the full brevet or the full expanse of what Disney's been up to. We also want to give a shout out to Film Threat with Chris Gore and Alan Ng. Their work uncovering the corruption behind the scenes with Disney Animation has been absolutely fantastic. Links to both channels down below. Culture, you have been doing tremendous work when it comes to coverage of Disney, of the theme parks. So tell us what you've got coming up on your channel.
Well, let's see. We've probably got a few more Dismal Disney videos coming out in the next few days because
I would say so.
That's all the news there seems to be. But we also cover some other things there like streaming. And I recently produced a video that talks specifically about what you got out of the strikes, or what the actors and the writers got out of the strikes. And it's surprisingly little.
That's right. Folks, I also want to say with a little disclaimer here that neither Culture nor myself are electrical engineers, nuclear engineers. We're not mechanical engineers. We don't work for utility plants, and we were not part of any investigative efforts with the state of Florida. So please note that we're not experts in this area. We're giving our editorialized opinions about this based on what is coming out with the audits, with the video, with the prima facie evidence. That's the best that we can do, and we hope we've done a good job telling the truth. So that's our aim, and we'll continue to do that as best we can as we continue to dive into these very deep topics that go far into the weeds. But as Culture said, that's where the snakes are found, and snakes there are aplenty. Folks, if you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe. When you click it, you stick it to the algorithms. It's the notification bell. Drop a comment down below. Let us know your thoughts. And folks, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing. Don't run fake power plants.
Things are going down the grapper. It's not good for investors. It's not just one bad decision. You're getting a call from Trian. Dang it, Bob! Your spending's been illegal. Your leadership is fatal. We expect more leaks and rumors. Makes no sense hiring. Disney is so unstable. What's the profitability timetable? It's time to fire Iger. This is just another Budweiser. Dang it, Bob! Your lies are quite the feature. More entertaining than what's in theaters. For a guy who reads the weather, you clearly are not too clever. Go fund yourself, Bob.